What's up, y'all? Winnie here, and today we're going to be checking out the Brutal Brick, which I'm just assuming is either going to be a regular brick that swole somehow, or a brick with mean words written on it. Those are my guesses. Let's see what we got. Euclid. Also, apparently it used to have a picture, but it doesn't anymore. It says, Protests Bogota Police Riot. SCP-1434 is held in a standard containment cell, empty save for a blank book labeled Charter of Etna and a copy of the Federal Criminal Code and Rules. Records of the state of Nevada have been altered to register the 25 square meters of the cell as the unincorporated township of Etna, now abandoned. Current containment procedures were devised to forestall the transfer of 1434's effect to larger cities or counties. A fresh copy of the FCCNR should be placed next to the SCP Monthly, while the previous month's copy should be incinerated unread. All security personnel assigned to Site-47 are subject to annual participation in Foundation Standard Seminar, the application of force and arrest, and you. This is in addition to all other regulation, orientation, and training sessions. Description: SCP-1434 is a large fragment of extruded clay brick, dull red in color, which, while totally inert, somehow affects the insertion of increasingly bizarre and impractical laws into the legal code of nearest sufficiently small municipality. Where borders overlap, it has always shown preference for the smaller body. Affected legislators show no memory of instituting any such laws, but will enforce them without protest. During the early phases of the BRICS influence, governments have been observed to pass laws of extremely limited applicability, such as a ban on smoking on Tuesdays. However, as the infection progresses, the activities prescribed in this manner become increasingly innocuous, while the penalties grow increasingly severe, to the point of life-threatening. 1434 further affects local law enforcement, who develop progressively violent mentalities over time. These mental alterations do not linger after 1434's relocation. Officers with more than 6 months of exposure compulsively apply excessive, often lethal force to any and all they suspect of transgressions. And then there's a hyphen here. Incident log. Since recovery, investigations into several public disturbances have recovered other 1434 fragments of varying size, which says the man in orange for some reason. Unrest is believed to have subsided when a party or parties unknown removed the object from the municipality. The object's whereabouts between incidents is as yet unknown, though research is continuing. Any outbreaks of police violence linked to recently introduced legislation should be studied for signs of object influence by the appropriate mobile task force. Case 1, 1987. Montgomery County in Maryland outlaws the use of shrimp in clearing snow from highways. 6 injured in collisions with state-operated snowplows. Case 4. City of Redacted makes the wearing of contact lenses compulsory for all residents who died between 1947 and 1962. City police officers conduct spontaneous mass disinterment, which results in the exhumation of over 3,000 sets of human remains. Case 21, 2007. Somewhere in France, limits consumption of all beverages containing less than 3% gasoline by volume. 62 killed by ingestion of toxic substances or in beverage compliance rates. Let's check out what this man in orange is about. Chris Kelly awoke to a glint of sunlight reflected on his window. A beautiful day, yes. Such luscious colors in the flowers outside, reds, violets, yellows, blues. He climbed out of bed and considered the clothes in his bureau, his closet. It was a magnificent collection indeed. So many vivid hues, like the flowers. How could he possibly have a preference? Kelly returned from the shower 10 minutes later to appraise the clothes once again. When he had finally decided upon the blue jeans, green shirt, something caught his eye. A hint of orange. His heart stuttered. He scanned the floor outside his window and found the source. A single orange rose had sprung up among its red siblings. Kelly seized the hedge trimmers he kept ready against his wall, pried open his window, and leaped into the yard. In a matter of seconds, he decapitated the problematic blossom and smuggled it back into the house. He hung the trimmers back upon their rack and lowered his gaze. Below them was the bowl he had always ready for this contingency. Kelly stuffed the flower in the bowl and retrieved his lighter. Within moments, the rose was ablaze. He watched it burn with a stone-carved face. Once it was no more, within ash, he scooped the remains up and sprinkled them over the yard. Kelly turned on the spot, examining every corner of his lawn, his heart still on double time. Upon verifying that no further contaminants were present, he went back inside, exhaling deeply. Kelly joined his sister and parents at breakfast. His father brought a massive plate of beautifully browned French toast to the table. His mother passed the syrup and butter around as everyone took their places. Kelly's little sister was 7 years old, or younger than him, and an eager and mischievous 9-year-old. She scarfed down the bread, making a mess of her cheeks and placemat. As this marvelous spectacle was occurring, Kelly's father addressed him. "You remember what you promised to do today?" "Of course." "Good boy." His father wiped his bottom lip clean of syrup. "Got your outfit picked out?" "Yes." His father looked at him warily for a moment. "A man at my office brought one of his old hats to work yesterday." Kelly looked at his father, a piece of toast suspended on his fork. The latter went on. "It was a lovely blue hat, but it had the tiniest streak." He traced his finger around his scalp. He probably hadn't even noticed when he put it on. The room was silent. Kelly cleared his throat. "What happened to him?" "Well, he called the police, of course. He'd have been arrested if he hadn't." Kelly closed his eyes slowly and repeated, "What happened to him?" His father gave a jerk of his head. "The usual." The family drew a slow and grim breath. "You understand what I'm trying to make clear, Chris?" he told his son. "Yes, I understand," Kelly replied. Breakfast continued without further incident until the little sister piped up. "Where's the carrot juice? We used to have it all the time. Why can't we have some?" The mood shifted abruptly. It was not the solemn quiet of the father's story, though. It was a mood of panic. The mother flung her hand across the table and covered her daughter's mouth, uttering a kind of muted scream. The father's head darted around, looking out the windows. Kelly was struck by a sudden frightful image of the rose he'd burned this morning. The girls gazed at her mother, terrified. We talked about this, dear. We can't have carrot juice anymore, or you know the other kind." She lowered her hand from the girl's mouth, who looked down at her empty plate, shaking slightly. Kelly got to his feet. I should probably get going." His parents looked up at him. "Be careful," his mother said. Kelly nodded. He left the house at a brisk pace, the dull gray morning casting a dim illumination over the town. Kelly set off down the main street, looking at the jackets and sweaters and scarves that the other pedestrians had produced for the day. Almost entirely cool hues, purples, blues, greens, black. It was unsurprising. A few people came out in reds, yellows, pinks, browns, but it was a very few. Not a lot of risk-takers out there. Kelly exhaled, his breath lingering on the air. There was nothing wrong with the cool colors. It was just, things had to be the way it had to be, and it got old. Kelly stopped by the mail office in the town square and dropped off the letter his father had given him. His task completed, he glanced around the square for a possible lunch site. He settled on the burger joint which had recently opened and headed over. However, his trip was interrupted by what came bursting out of the restaurant's door. Kelly blinked, the world seeming to shrink for the tiniest of moments. There a man stood, draped from head to toe in the most bizarre assortment of clothes ever. Coats, ties, scarves, belts, and every single fragment shown in a different and glaring shade of orange. The man stood in the square, rotating slightly, gazing at the bystanders who stared back at him, mouths ajar. Vaguely, Kelly heard the sirens in the distance. The man walked out to the center of the square, his arms outstretched and a great wide smile upon his face. He laughed. "Why are you afraid? It is your color. You must take it back. They will only take more from you. What's next? Your wooden chairs? Your caffeinated drinks? Your light-haired children? Take it back! Do not cower. Take everything back!" At that moment, the man in orange was obscured by the bodies of several thick policemen, which had leaped upon him. The square stood in silence, every eye staring at the struggling mass in its center. The police chief marched over and watched the man, beaten and bleeding, dragged to his feet. "Shaky little cunt, aren't you?" the chief said as he smacked his baton across the man's shins. "Well, I like the spirit. Makes it so much more fun." He let out a whistle. "Gents, fetch the boiling paint. We got a badass on our hands over here. Let's give him the tour." The man was forced to his knees as two more policemen hauled over a tub of hot blue paint. The chief chuckled as the tub was raised up and towards the man's head. As the tub's rim was inches from his hair, a yell rent the frigid morning air. "The orange!" The chief and his men turned around just in time to see the gargantuan mob which bore down upon them. The small force stood no chance. Kelly gazed in terror and amazement as the rebels took to the street, bearing great tall banners of orange, which pierced the gray morning and filled Kelly with a terrific wonders as he remembered only in self-denied dreams. It was time. They would take it back. They would take back their orange, their world. It was time! The outbreak of violence in Honeywood had been successfully suppressed. The instances of 1434 which triggered the anomalous activity have been recovered. No further events have occurred. Well, dystopian tale, it says. Because of how it was written, there will not be ads on this video because I don't feel like dealing with YouTube yelling at me for this one word here. So at least you won't have to worry about that when you see it, and when there's no ads at the beginning of the video, by the end of it, you'll find out why. So, that's going to do it for this episode. If you liked it, a like and a subscribe will be groovy. If you want to click the bell, that'll give you notifications for future uploads, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Later.